Welcome, everyone, to the September edition of Wireside Chat. And I'm very pleased to have as my guest tonight, Cynthia Liu. And let me give you a little introduction. Cynthia is an author published with Penguin Random House, Disney, Marvel, SNS, that's Simon & Schuster, Sterling, and Scholastic, a lot of S's in there, for a variety of formats, including picture books, transitional readers, chapter books, middle grade, and young adult novels. She has also written film adaptations and audiobook scripts for full cast narration. As a consultant and editor, she takes on publishing projects requiring a story architect, project manager, or managing editor for private clients and companies that represent independent authors, musicians, social media influencers, and celebrities. Her work is never boring. She holds an MFA in creative writing and publishing with a concentration in screenwriting from Antioch University in Los Angeles. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You have done like such a wealth of different jobs in the publishing world. Can you talk a little bit, tell us like a little bit about your pathway to where you are today?
Yep. It all began with social media, actually. Back in the day when LiveJournal was a thing, MySpace was just becoming popular. And the way I learned everything was through the internet, basically. Like, I got in my head that I was going to become a children's book author because at the time, Harry Potter had become huge, and I was a business consultant. And I thought it was really odd that all these adults were reading a children's book. And I'm like, okay, what am I missing out here? And I finally like bought a copy at the airport, read it, and thought to myself, oh my goodness, somebody has this as a job. Like, they're writing this amazing story, and how cool would it be to do that for a living? So it just planted a seed in my head that maybe if I were to settle down and have a family and stop traveling, that I would become a children's book author, even though I had no clue how to write. So
So you didn't have your MFA at that point.
no, I didn't have any of that. I was just a business consultant. I was literally like doing process flows and helping roll out software to Fortune 500 companies. So I think that job taught me how to break down any project and figure out what the goal is, gather the information that you need to be able to accomplish the task of that project. And because I've been thrown in so many different environments, I was very used to just being in a place where I didn't know anything. I mean, I was working on satellite uh, handsets with the military to billing for like Bell South to financial services, Y2K to Sony PlayStation, helping them launch their new website for, oh my gosh, that was so fun. There's just so many different cereal company. Like, so I was like, okay, this is going to be a piece of cake. All I need to do is just like figure it out, just like I do with all these other projects. So I kind of went into it that way. And the fastest way for me to get information at the time was to go online, find where the writers were hanging out. I heard about the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I then immediately joined that because I knew they were the largest organization that could help, bring me into the fold of that world. Met people, started reading some books about writing, and it just kind of started from there. So just getting to know people and getting to know, like, what does this mean to be a children's book writer, that eventually just translated into a bunch of other things. So it's always been that same approach, which is, ooh, that'd be cool to do. How do you do that? Let me research it online and then start learning about it. So that's how I've done it, like, every time. So yeah.
That's
That
incredible.
answer
I
the
mean,
question?
one of the things that we talk about in this program, especially like in MFA 505, which is the gateway course into the program, is the imposter syndrome. And we always talk about like, oh, every writer has the imposter syndrome. We had something we all have to work through. You seem to be somebody that does not have the imposter syndrome.
Well, yeah, it was kind of interesting. I think going to a critique group really helped me understand that everybody has to start somewhere. And so no, I don't think any writer just is like just born just knowing how to do this, like we all have to learn how to like ride the bike, without the training wheels. And so I started out like any other writer. I was just completely clueless. And just I was like, well, if I want to be published, I can't be afraid to share my work, because what am I going to do? Hide it from my readers and stick it in my closet and be like, yeah, if you like beg me, maybe I'll let you see it. No, I have to be able to be okay with like showing them my stuff. So I was totally okay with, I don't care how bad it is. I'm only going to get better if I just put it out there for people to look at and tell me their thoughts. And I try to listen very closely to their thoughts and go, hey, I agree with that, or that's a different way, an angle, like maybe pocket that for later. So I just always constantly look for feedback that resonated with me, that like got me more inspired to make my work better. Um, so yeah, I mean that's exactly what I did in consulting as well. Like I would get
Well,
feedback from people I worked with about really want this to work that way, or somebody else would say, well, no, it should work that way. And so ultimately, I have to use logic and my own intellect to go, okay, this is the path I'm going to
mhm.
choose to help solve this problem. So, yeah, I didn't really have the imposter syndrome. I did feel insecure though during my first critique group, naturally, because
Yeah.
I was sweating and I was like shaking when I was reading my manuscript. But then once I did it once, it was like, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. Everyone's so nice.
Well, that's fantastic. And as you were talking about that, it did strike me that you were applying a lot of the career skills, I guess, that you were had already learned from your consultancy work
Yeah.
towards writing. And it does seem like there's a pretty good match.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I was a consultant, I was put in so many circumstances where I just was the youngest person in the bunch and also the most clueless. So my clients would be twice my age, and they knew their work, right? I'd come in as the person who was like, I'm here to help you out. Tell me what your job is. And they would look at me like, how are you going to be able to help me? But I think it's just a process of just doing lots of listening, and
Mhm.
just provide that outside perspective. So I was so happy to get outside perspective, to be on the other end of it, right? Like, because people who aren't familiar with what I'm doing can just offer insight that there's just no way I could come up with that on my own. There's just no way. So it's, yeah.
So what are the first books that you published under your own name, and
Hmm.
how did that come about, and continue with your story of how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah, so the first novel that I wanted to write was, it really just became, I'm going to become a children's book writer. I sat down in front of my computer. I had no idea what I was going to write, and I just started writing. I just like, some people tell me that there are some people who can visualize things in their head, like see scenes, but other people can't. Like I didn't know that was a thing. Like I've always been able to see things. Like I saw a young girl in a classroom. She didn't know anyone, which is very much like weirdly like my experience as a middle grade kid. I moved a lot. And so then I realized my brain was just driving me to write a story about kind of like myself and the things that I experienced as a middle schooler, because I moved a lot so much. I was always the outsider. I was like kind of nerdy. And I always felt for people who were similar to me and that they were like outsiders. So when I was moving from one school to the next, I would always be really nice to the person who was the most rejected, I guess. So in Paris Pan Takes the Dare, that's really the premise of that novel. She really learns like how to um, I guess how to, it's a very coming of age. She does things she's not proud of because she doesn't want to be like left out of the group, because she finally has friends, but then she ultimately owns up to her mistakes, and there's like the family crisis and all this stuff that's super kind of like pseudo autobiographical. So writing
Right.
that novel was difficult because I was learning how to write a novel, but I had plenty of material to work with because my family existed and they're highly dysfunctional. But I just didn't really know how to like chapter. I didn't know how like how to structure or not. I was crazy. It was just so difficult. I was just doing kept hearing like, oh, just write by the seat of your pants, write organically, be a pantser, and I was like, I know now that the pantsing thing is so counterproductive. But I needed to do it because it
Yeah.
just was very freeing, and then
Right.
yeah, ultimately, I think if it had not been for a lot of help from my critique partner, she and I would swap manuscripts like every 5 minutes practically. And she had a really good, she just would give her reader feedback very honestly, and I would do that for her. So we both got strong together and we both dared each other to get agents because we're like, I think this is good. Yeah, this sounds good to me too. Like, this could be totally published. I think so, And so we would dare each other to query all the top agents. And then ultimately we both got agents, I think, the same year. And then once we got the agents, then it was learning once again, like how to deal with feedback from an agent who was patient enough to try to teach me how to write a novel. But it was torturous. I almost thought that I wasn't going to make it. And then I guess I just kept persisting. I almost got to the point where like, you know what, maybe I'm not going to be published. I'll just be a literary agent because I do like critiquing and I do love this idea of staying in the industry. And it was right when I was just about to like go, I'm so tired of all the rejections that I got an opportunity from my agent she said, hey, okay, we don't know if we can sell your original novel, but how about you try to write a proposal for a young adult novel for an existing series? And so I was like, okay, this is my last chance. And I remember like strapping on the Rambo bandana visually and be like, this is it. Like, just sit down and all you have to do is just one chapter. It's just one chapter, and then one outline. Like, it's not the whole novel, okay? So I was just trying to psych myself into it. So I was like pounding away at the keyboard and like trying to make it good and using my critique partner. And then I sent it off like, I think it was like December or something. And then I was like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm like done. Like, and then it come January, everything's super quiet. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna get rejected again. Come January, they came back and they offered on my middle grade novel, the original, and
Oh,
the
wow.
YA novel. So all of a sudden I had three books under contract
Wow. From the same publisher.
from the same publisher.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, because they saw both. The agent was pitching to the same because the editor was like, "How about you have Cynthia try this out to see what she can come up with?" So yeah, so I went from being like, I'm going to become a literary agent maybe to suddenly I had 3 books under contract.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then during that whole process though, I was blogging. I was writing about how to write for children and teens, even though I wasn't published. But during that time period, I was also critiquing a lot. So I would do free critiques and it became these contests and stuff online. And so I had like this weird following of like people who were like, get a free teak from Cynthia. They're called free teaks. And there was a whole thing, and a lot of like I did auctions too. And so I befriended editors and agents to raise money for pet shelters, stuff like that, and so I was just really involved with the community. And that ultimately, my blog kind of exploded at the time, Twitter just got invented or something. So I became one of the top, I don't know, so many authors on Twitter. I was so surprised. I was like, why am I getting all these followers all of a sudden? It's so weird. And how did I evolve into eventually doing book coaching? Well, once those books were then sold, I had to revise them at the same time. My critique partner was like, you should charge. Like, at the same time, I was going through a divorce. And so the whole income thing was like, I don't know what's going to happen now. Like,
Right.
so I was like, yeah.
Got to bring in the bucks.
Yeah. So I was like, oh boy, like this is getting kind of scary. So I was like, okay, let me do it. So I just went out and just contacted everybody that had done free takes with. I had an email list and I said, okay, I guess I'm going to charge now. And I gave out price lists and all of this. And sure enough, like within I think within 24 hours of that email, I had already amassed like $1,200. And I was like, oh my God, 24 hours, $1,200. What? For me? I was like shocked, and I was like, okay, I think this could be a business, And then so I basically put my consultant back hat on. I developed a business plan, like how do I do the pricing strategy? How do I make sure I have enough time to do all this stuff? And then I still maintain the blog, and then it eventually evolved into getting these clients that were kind of from all walks of life, and one of them happened to be very wealthy, which was kind of helpful. And I remember it was like he was like, I have some children's stories, and can you help me with it? And so I took a look at his stories, and I was like, yeah, they weren't even close to what they should be for children's book stories because they had adults as main characters and all. So there was a lot of work to do. So but it was kind of weird because I was like, I don't know if this guy's for real, because it was like something about the communication that I was like worried that maybe this was like a scammer.
Mhm.
And so I said, okay. So I started looking up rates for, because I knew I was charging very cheap rates, like very, very cheap. Like people had told me like this is just too cheap. So I went to the Editorials Freelancers Association to look
Yep.
at market rates. And so I was like, okay, if I'm gonna because this person really wanted to get me on the phone, which I was like, oh, everything was like asynchronous and through email, right? So it was kind of scary. I was like, I don't know if I want to take a phone call, like if this is like some sort of weirdo, right? So I ultimately said, well, it's going to cost to do the phone call for a 30-minute phone consult, cost you $150. So, which was like very different from the rates I was charging people that I already knew. It was like very much, much higher. And he was like, sure, no problem. Sure enough, he paid me in advance. And I was like, oh, this guy might actually be legitimate. And so we got on the phone, and sure enough, it was completely legit. And from there, I did a bunch of work for him, and he's like my longest term client. It's kind of like I don't know if you've ever been a landlord. Like, has anyone in the audience ever been a
I'm a
landlord?
dean. Does that count? It's sort of like a landlord.
Yeah, well, I have been a landlord, okay? And my theory is that sometimes you get really great tenants, and when you get one great tenant, it just like makes your whole it just supports the whole building, like it's all good. But if you get like several very bad tenants, like it can just ruin the whole thing, right? So I feel like I had one really great client that kind of made up for a lot of different other experiences in the coaching world. And so my attitude has always been just continue to seek great clients, and you won't have to really worry. So I think, and they recommend people. And so now mostly what I do is word of mouth. And there are many projects that I just decline because it's just I've gotten to that point now after building the business to just pick and choose my projects. And that's even true with Disney and Marvel. So once I started doing contract work for, I think that was the first one was with, I think it was Aladdin, maybe something like that. um my network, like my critique partner, right, she was like, I got approached by an editor who would really like someone to write Disney contract work, but I don't do Disney contract work. How about you, Cynthia? And I'm like, oh my gosh, at that time I was like taking my daughter to Disney World like every year, and I was like, of course. And it was just by chance that editor was flying into my city for a conference, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was like the day before I found out. And then we met up. It was like something out of a movie. Like we went to RL in downtown, like where Oprah would interview her authors. So we met there. I was like, we gotta go there. And so we chatted, and ultimately that's how my relationship with Disney began. We hit it off, editor and me. We talked about the projects that she had. And from there, she has referred me to all of the other editors, and it spread to Marvel because they're all related now.
Mhm.
So I've been a Disney contract writer for a long time, like maybe 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like any one of these jobs would be like a full-time job for a regular person, and you somehow are managing to juggle all of these things, plus being a writer. So what is your secret for like keeping all these balls in the air?
Oh my goodness. I actually don't know how I'm doing it, but I've been doing it for so long. There must be some system. I definitely have a mental way of keeping track of the number of hours that I have available. So for example, I teach at SNHU, right? Like my boyfriend jokes that you have like 5 jobs. Like, oh yeah, sometimes it's like I do. I rotate them around. But I teach at SNHU, but not every term, right?
Right,
I
right.
have my long-term clients, super handful, slim now, very slim. It used to be a lot more. And I slowly whittled them down to like my stable clients. Like, they're the ones that I know that they'll always be there. So now it's just a handful,
And
like a few.
let me ask you a question about
Mhm.
like those clients. Are these writers who are, you know, producing books like on a yearly basis, or they're always working on something new, or are you shepherding them through like a long-term project?
Yeah, so it really just depends because some clients will come and go. Like they'll have a project, they'll be really hot on it, but then like many writers, they'll put it aside and not come back to it for years, right? So
Yeah.
I don't rely on clients in that sense. So I think as I started doing the freelancing, I also expanded into different things. So I don't just do editing or helping with structure or helping with line editing. I also learned how to do book marketing, right?
Hmm.
And I also got involved in independent publishing because I had some clients who were like, I don't really care if it's with major trade. I want it on Amazon. And so then I started learning how to do Amazon. And so and I also myself, I use myself as a guinea pig. I just wrote like writing for children. I took my blog and turn it into an independently published book like I did on my own back when Amazon was pretty brand new. The KDP thing was brand new. So I did that and I was like, oh my gosh, they really are trying to make this super easy for just about anyone. But then Amazon advertising came. And so I was like, oh, I got to learn how to do that. And my client was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's figure it out. I'm like, all right. So I was like, let me crack that nut open. So I started researching Amazon advertising and then I started helping clients with advertising. So I'm kind of one of these things where like my clients know that if they approach me, I may not be available, but if I can squeeze it in as something that's small, that's compact sized, then I'll go, yes, I can do this. For example, I might have a client that says, oh, I just wrote another book. Can you do the A+ marketing for it? I'll be like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like I can fit that in like on a Saturday, you know? If someone says like, I have this very big project, I might go, ooh, I can't at the moment, but let me refer you to someone else.
Hmm.
So I still keep good relationships with my clients, but I'm constantly thinking about what can I fit in given what I'm doing at the moment. Because I can never really predict, right? Disney might not say anything about my next project for 6 months, and I don't want to be sitting there like not making any income, right? So
Hmm.
that's how I'm doing it, I guess. I just basically told you. I'm just constantly juggling the different balls, and it's just I guess I've been lucky in the sense that there's enough volume that I'm usually not dead in the water, right? So like you guys with SNHU, there's a term I can pick up as an adjunct. That was another thing to kind of hedge risk as well. Like I was like, ooh, like maybe one day I'll want to become a professor with tenure. I thought about this at some stage of my life. And that's when I was like, ooh, you better go get your MFA because
Hmm.
that will be what will get you into that position. Should you one day want to just be still, have something consistent, long term, and do that. So while I was in between these writing projects, I just went to night class and got to pursue my master's. Ultimately, did a low residency MFA at Antioch. I don't think I knew about SNHU at the time. I don't
It
think.
might not have been around. I mean,
Yeah, I don't
the
know. Yeah,
MFA program is
now it's
relatively new,
everywhere.
so.
Yeah, and then as soon as I got my MFA, I was like, okay, get your foot in the door. So I immediately started applying. And when it was online, remote, I was like, oh, I have to go for this. And so, yeah, so then I got an adjunct position with SNHU and I was like, oh, thank goodness, right? Because it's so awesome. I can like turn on a term, turn off a term, all of that. So between that and the Disney coming on and off, my stable clients coming on and off, and being able to just turn down, like, right, like sometimes SNHU will say, can you teach this term? And I'll go, I can't because I've got a Disney project, sadly. But that's good for you guys because I'm publishing, right? I'm like building my
Yeah,
portfolio. It's
yeah,
good. You don't
absolutely.
need to, yeah, you don't need to be stale.
No, not at all.
Right. So
Um,
it's beautiful. Yeah. And so, yeah, so that's kind of how it works. It's just like getting enough going that you can then have enough to say no to and yes to and no to and yes to based on what's going on in your life. So yeah.
Very, very cool. All right, I'm gonna follow up a little bit on that later, but I want to turn to the chat and pull a question out of the chat.
Okay.
And I want to remind people in the audience, please post questions for Cynthia in the chat. So here's a question. I've been wanting to write a motivational autobiography of my life and the adversities I have dealt with. My issue is not knowing where to start in writing versus seeking someone to review it and then publish it. I would love to hear some recommendations if you have any, Cynthia.
Okay, so if you were to be like my client, the first thing I would ask for is, could I get a short excerpt of your writing? Just to kind of understand where that person is in the, I guess, the continuum of on the path of publication. So I usually will ask for something really short, like 500 words, just 500 words, because you can tell a lot in about 500 words. And I'll just say like, and then from there, I also will schedule a call with that person to kind of gauge how badly do they want to write this on their own versus how willing are they to hire someone to write on their behalf. So if I look at the sample and also talk to the person, I can get a good sense of, okay, we've got a lot of work to do, like for in terms of the writing. I might gauge from that conversation that maybe they're totally okay with hiring someone else to write the novel, the memoir, whatever you want to call it. And then I also will talk to them about budget, because it costs to have a book coach, it costs money to hire a ghostwriter. And then if they want to take a stab at writing it on their own, I'll go, okay, well, FYI, you have to have very thick skin. Like if you work with me, you kind of do. Like I'm just very honest, but I'm very kind, but you have to be really like willing to take in feedback, see what resonates with you. You be prepared to like meet with me in calls, turn around revisions, blah, 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 blah. So that's usually how I start. Sometimes clients will go fairly far, but generally speaking, it's about, I would say, an average new book coaching client, maybe like 3 meetings on average. Once when you first meet them, twice when they try to turn something in, and then maybe they get to a revision stage. It really depends on how serious this person is, right? So that's why it's like it's not too common where you run into someone that is really in it for the long haul. So that's why when you get a stable client like that, those things that's like the good tenant that will last for years and years because they're there, they're willing to like go all the way. But that's not that I would say that's like maybe 5% of all just like random contacts. It's not like everyone. But if you're deep into the writing community, like if someone's already pursuing an MFA, that's a little different. The odds will probably be a lot higher that they'll stick with it because they're already sinking money into the MFA.
Right.
I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to grab another question as well. It's starting to get some great questions here. In 608, editing and coaching, we are discussing our philosophies right now. In a nutshell, what would you say is your editing coaching philosophy?
Oh, it's kind of right here. This is part of it. Like hard work, be kind, and stay humble.
Yeah.
And then, wait, I have more. I like put it in my office, like, here. This is another one. Can you read that? Is it backwards?
No, I can sort of read it.
It
We
says,
don't grow. So
we don't grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's another one. This looks funny. It's not junk. It's a collection. Okay. So basically, if you kind of put it all together, like my philosophy is usually, it's usually about this persistence thing. It's about definitely being kind. And I mean, I persevere hard with my coachees and my students. Like, I don't leave things on the table. Like, I really want to push their writing to be stronger. So I won't just like gloss over something and ignore it if I know that it's going to hold a writer back. So I'm very, like, you can see I'm always like, work hard and grow through challenges. So I persevere to challenge my students. Kindness is so important because honestly, it's like that. It's writers, to them, it's not junk. It's a collection, right? It's like
Right.
these are things that are very meaningful to them, whatever they're putting into their stories. So I have to be very, very like considerate of that and let that writer be able to sort out for themselves with whatever feedback I give them to choose their own path and direction and hopefully deliver the feedback in a way that inspires and motivates them to be able to make changes to their work that they like, that they
Right.
feel makes their work stronger. Not what Professor Lou says, it's what
Right.
they think, right? So I think that is at the heart of my coaching philosophy.
I'm going
I
to
hope that
follow up.
helps.
There's a couple of other great questions in here. Have you ever reached a point where you pulled the plug on a project completely? How did you know that it was time to move on, or do you believe that everything can be saved through work?
Yeah, I think of the latter. I believe everything can, I feel like everything for me, like my critique partner jokes, like you never give up on your stuff. I'm like, it's maybe like this now and then like, but I'll come back to it and it'll look like that later. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe I'm just like a saver. I just don't want to waste like some good idea that I had, but maybe the execution of that idea was poor, right? Like there's a novel that this has been on the back burner for like 10 years, but it initially started out a certain way where I really, really wanted to be a surprise that the teen was dead at the end of the novel. And I got so much feedback from my MFA program. Like everybody under the sun was like, don't do that. Like this is
Yeah.
just like so anticlimactic. And I was just so stuck. Like I wanted to so sixth sense this thing, and it just I wasn't ready to go there, and eventually I got to a place where I was ready to go there, and I'm so happy, now that I feel like I have a whole outline of like, okay, when it's ready, I'm ready to like tackle that. I'm unstuck now. I'm going to save it. It's going to be even better, but thanks to everybody else that was just like kept persisting with me, no, don't do this, please. Like, it's going to be so much better if you take it another direction. And then I started writing it that way for my MFA program. And I was like, oh my gosh, they were so right. Why did I not take that feedback? And I tell myself, I just wasn't ready at the time,
Right.
you know?
I think there are definitely ideas that you have to be ready for, right? You have to find, like the book I'm working on right now is a book that I started writing. I wrote the first draft of it in like 1982.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so far beyond my abilities then that I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm very dissatisfied with it. I put it aside. Um, and it's only, in the last couple of years that I've come back to it and I felt like, oh yeah, now I'm ready. Now I can do it.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course,
And
it's changed a lot in that time
exactly.
because
Yeah.
I
And
have.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, like, I've changed so much, from when the idea first started. It's kind of cool, like, to be okay with letting something go and be like, you know what? It's cool. I'm just gonna let this chill out in the drawer. There's something else that's like shiny dangling object right now that I'm like attracted to. So I'll just go for that and then not worry about whatever I left.
So here's another question from the chat. This refers back to something that you were talking about earlier in your answer to another question,
Mhm.
where you're talking about the 3 meetings that you have with your client. Why 3? Is it that they don't go beyond 3 meetings because of the cost, or because they feel that at that point you have given them the tools that they need to succeed on their own?
Gosh, I think it's both. I think that and the thing is, I don't have a way to truly know because it's not like I do I probably could if I was like truly optimized, like do like a post coaching survey to figure out like why does my average seem to be 3? Either am I really a terrible coach Or is it that they have the tools? And I think that there's definitely, for sure, I've gotten emails like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we had that coaching meeting 5 years ago. I'm now published. Like, it really helped me, blah, blah, blah. So I do get those, like, and I know I'm credited in many of my clients' books. So there's definitely successes where maybe it only took a few, just to get them like going in
Mhm.
terms of tools. Like even in my classes at SNSU, I only have like 10 weeks, with a student. And in many of these cases, I'm not reviewing their work every week. I just have like our whatever, they reach out to me and say, hey, can you talk to me about my story? And maybe I meet with them 2 or 3 times max. So it's always so nice to get a message or something on LinkedIn and like, oh, like, guess what? I just saw. So maybe it only takes a few. But I do think there are probably also, there are definitely also writers who will say, I don't think I'm ready, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or whatever it might be. And I'm thinking, oh man, maybe I went too hard on them, or whatever. But I also think that I don't think I go any harder than any agent or editor would. So it's really, it depends on the writer too, like how
Yeah.
whether they can take it, I guess.
Well, it's like you say, I don't want to resort to the cliche of having to be cruel to be kind, but you don't want to be puffing up a writer as a client
Yeah.
or a student for that matter,
Yeah.
in such a way that they're not going to be prepared to succeed in the real world,
Yeah.
right? Because it's a tough world out there for a
Yeah.
writer to make it. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just the
Exactly.
reality.
Yeah. I can't do it. No, it's too hard.
Okay, some more questions from the chat. This is a very lively chat tonight. I'm currently working on my first round of revision for my fantasy novel, 111,000 plus words. Wow, it's overwhelming. How many rounds of revision should I plan for? And they go on to say I'm majoring in business administration, so I'm not currently in the MFA program, and that's
Cool.
that's neither here nor there. I
Wow.
mean, it's great that you're writing regardless of whether you're in the MFA
That
program
is
or not.
really cool. 110,000 words. Okay, so this has happened to me before where someone has a very lengthy work. The first thing I would say is to make this manageable, reverse outline, like immediately reverse outline, which
And can you
means
explain what that means?
so it's basically take if your work is chaptered, then basically write down chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and then read chapter 1, summarize it in a few sentences. Bullet points would be awesome, bullet points, just so that you can literally digest more readily what is in the novel. Then what I would also say is definitely check out books about how to structure a novel, because I can already sense 110,000 words is in the industry. That's almost like, yeah, that's really long, because ultimately what we have to think about in terms of length is print cost. So if you have 110,000 words, and if you were to try to print that and use normal sized font, many times that's going to up the price. I remember like talking to a client who had a book that was like 330,000 words.
Wow.
And I said, okay, we price it out per page. I did the math. I go, we would have to charge your reader $130 for your novel. That would have to be the list price. And she was like, oh. I was like, yes, let's think about breaking this down into several, maybe it's 3 novels. And then also within that, probably getting this down to a normal length so that your publisher won't have to charge $40 for something that would be 30, right? Because length does matter in the publishing world. So I would say reverse outline, and then maybe you can also get the assistance of a developmental editor. It might be worth paying them for a few hours to just take a look at your outline, to see if they can pick up on some things in the actual structure of the novel that needs to be worked on, so that this can be pared down to something closer to, I would say on the top end, 70 to 80 in that zone, just so that you don't end up trying to revise something as far larger than it needs to be to tell a really great story. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my approach. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to chime in a little bit because I
Yes.
feel like different genres have different
Yes.
norms in that regard. So 110,000 words for a fantasy novel, like an epic fantasy novel, That's still a lot, but it's not unheard of. But I
Mhm.
would say, if that's your first novel, unless you've really written something, fantastic that's going to compare to the 110,000 word epics that writers like George R. R. Martin are putting out,
Mhm.
um, then it's too long, probably.
Mhm.
And any book is, before you've gone through revisions, almost every book is longer than it needs to be.
Mhm.
Um, Part of revision is cutting your work down, whittling it down so that it's as long as it needs to be,
Mhm.
um, which translates in to as short as it can be.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how many rounds of revision that's going to take you. That's
Mhm.
hard to say. It's impossible to predict. I mean,
Yeah.
I found like the the approach that I has always worked for me is like when I know that I'm starting to make things worse, that's when I stop revising.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I'm the same way too. I actually have a target, especially with clients, and with my publishers. Uh, but this takes skill to get to this level where you go, okay, my first pass of revisions is developmental editing, meaning I'm literally going to the reverse outline because I have this hunking monster. I don't know where I need to cut. Like it's just here. So I need
So
to be able to look at
what does the reverse outline tell you though? Like
it.
what
It tells.
actionable information do you get from the reverse outline to assist you in your revision process?
Okay, so what I do is I'm looking at story structure with my reverse outline. I can see in like a few pages what's in my whole novel. I can then go, what's happening in this chapter? Have I raised suspense? Is it just explanation? Well, okay, wait a second. Like, why are we just explaining things for chapters, right? So I just look for like flaws that I can already see, just like I can look at my characters, who's there, who did I forget about? Do I have too many characters? How do I simplify this? And again, it's like always about how do I tell the same story just as
Hmm.
well in less space so that my pacing is really great.
Right, right.
And then, so I don't write epic fantasies, but even then, if I wrote an epic fantasy, it would be the same way. Like, where is this outline getting boring? Like, how do I do these five things that are kind of doing the same thing? Well, maybe I should compress this into like one event that does this one time. So that's what I look for. So my developmental editing would be this big picture look at the story structure. The second pass is called my substantive edits. The second pass is like, okay, I'm happy with how the overall outline will look. I'm actually revising the outline. I'm not revising the book. Does that make sense? I'm not going into my manuscript at all. I'm
Yep.
just looking at the outline so I can have something manageable to work with. And then in my substantive edit, I'll then go ahead and execute what my outline now says that I should be doing, because hopefully it's shorter and it's snappier and it's building the tension like I want it to. And then I'll go into the manuscript and start executing those changes. And then I might have some epiphanies and go, you know what, let me change this in my outline and change that into my outline because I just discovered something even better. So I'll just keep revising that outline to keep it manageable. And so that will be like my second pass. So now I'm like, okay, now my outline's even more solid. And now I know exactly what's in each chapter. It might be a little ugly, but I know the scenes now. I'm like, I'm in. Now all I have to do is just go in chapter by chapter for my final pass, and then I'm done. So that's I use this approach for every project with Disney. It works really well because the editors only need to see it twice, and sometimes they only need to see it once if I get really good at it. But like generally speaking, I don't want to torture my editors or agent by having them read my thing like 7 million times. I really wanted to get it to be as tight as I can. So that reverse outlining thing when you have a big draft of something is super, super handy to help point out your own, your manuscript's weak spots because you have the high level bird's eye view. Some people use their walls, they put post-it notes to
Yep.
do that. And there's all sorts of ways to do that.
All right, here comes another question.
Okay.
Um, I've got to scroll up here. Here we go. Um, I would like to get my MFA in creative writing, and I hope you will apply to this program or some other.
That'd be
But
awesome.
that AI will make creative writing from humans irrelevant. What is your perspective on creative writers using AI?
Well, that's a great question because I feel like AI will ultimately be not an enemy, but be a collaborator in a way. So the reason why I say this is because I love to get my hands into everything, right? So I was like, what if I became an AI tutor? I heard that's a job, right? So
Yeah,
I just
we're teaching people how to write prompts and things like that.
Yeah, so I actually auditioned to become an AI tutor. So I did it for like, I don't know, 12 hours or something. So now I kind of understand how AI learns. And after going through that, I was like, I'm not, I don't feel threatened at all. Because when you understand how AI actually works, it's just trying to predict things. And it's so
Right.
fun. It's kind of like, how you have a magic 8 ball and you shake it and it comes up with a message, like I think AI can be used in so many ways to help brainstorm. I don't think it can really, maybe one day it will, but I think we're in a great time and place where we're not really replaceable. I mean, our imaginations are so cool and we know so much about being human that AI clearly doesn't know. And we can try to train it, but honestly, I don't know. There's so many things about the human brain that doctors can't figure out. If no one can figure it out, AI likely can't put it together because it's being trained by humans too. Does that mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Yeah,
not like somebody out there knows it all and they're just downloading their brain and now AI has it. Nobody really knows the mysteries of the human brain. And because of that, AI doesn't really know. It can just put two and
right.
two together. But
Yeah. And I mean, the reason that I segued into this particular question was because of what you were saying about reverse outlining, because it occurs to
mhm,
me that, you know, you're taking a chapter of your book, you're breaking it down into a couple of sentences and moving on to the next chapter. Well, why wouldn't you just feed your chapter or your manuscript into an AI and say, make me a reverse outline? And it could certainly do that. But the reason that you wouldn't want to do that, at least in my opinion, is
mhm,
that there's a missing step if AI does it rather than you
mhm,
doing it yourself. If
mhm,
you're the writer that has written that chapter, and then you have to think about it from a different perspective and break it down into a kind of a cogent couple of sentences, you're going to learn something about your chapter that you didn't know before. I guarantee it. And when you
mhm.
see that list of 1 or 2 sentence summations of each chapter, you're going to see something about the structure, the architecture of your book that you didn't see before, that you didn't know before. I also guarantee that.
Mhm.
And if AI produces that for you, you're never going to see it. You're never going
Yeah.
to learn that stuff that you learned only by doing it. And
Yeah.
that's why I personally feel I'm kind of vehemently as a writer against AI because I believe that writers learn by doing.
Yeah.
And if something else is doing it for you, you're never going to learn to be a better writer.
Oh, yeah, that's so true because it skips over all the synapses that you have to make to connect words and ideas. Like, I would only use AI in a very rote way, which is like, I mean, I use it today for like really, it's like, okay, I have a list of things. Can you please just alphabetize this for me? Like stuff where I'm like, but for the creative stuff, that is not something I use AI for at all. I might say, I need to write a children's book story about bears. Give me words about bears. Like just words that are about bears. And it's like that's useful, especially if I'm doing rhyming or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so it just saves me time from like looking up something, like so I use it like a secretary or admin assistant. And I think that's where it's really powerful.
Yeah, I confess that I do have a use for AI, which is that when I'm grilling something in my backyard, I look for recipes. I'm like, how do I cook this? And we'll come up with something that so far at least has not poisoned me. So, um, all right, let's see if there's anything else I can get out of here. I saw one question here. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Cynthia.
Sure.
All right, let's see if I can find it here. And this is from a screenwriter who's in
Okay.
the audience. I have a
Nice.
TV series called Wi-Fi. The log line is In the aftermath of an alien war, a fractured team must recover a powerful energy source. My question is, would that be something that you would want to read? What would your reaction be if you saw that as a log line?
Okay, reread it for me again.
Yep. In the aftermath of an alien war, a fractured team must recover a powerful energy source.
I feel like I need a little bit more, like in
Yeah.
terms of specificity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
It doesn't sound like something not publishable. I just feel like I don't know, like in the log line, what's at risk? I'm just thinking like, what are the stakes? I'm just thinking of various things that you could put in a log line. What is the obstacle? What is the biggest obstacle? Who is the enemy? Like there are so many different ways to write a log line, but yeah, what's at stake is really kind of what I think is missing.
Yeah. In For those of us writing novels, which is most people in this audience and certainly everyone in our program, um, writers don't really use log lines exactly. We use, query letters, I guess, or pitches. So like, what would you say is the difference between like a log line that screenwriters use and what fiction writers use?
Yeah, so a log line to me is something that you would say to the big producer director in the elevator because you only got like a
Right.
split second of his time or her time. Um, so it has to distill, it has to be immediately highly, because it's film, right? It has to be highly visual. At least that's what I think. A query, just like that one little paragraph that pitches a book, has a little bit more space to be there, like to describe itself. It still needs to be, I like to say the word sexy. It still needs to be sexy, like, ooh, but it doesn't have to be like I have to spend millions of dollars to make this thing work and people will buy movie tickets, right? So that's why I think there's like more pressure on the log line to be able to go, yep, that's a
Yeah.
movie and I'm going to spend bazillion dollars. So versus the novel, which is very quite different, you could have like a whole novel about baking a cookie, if you did it really well. Yeah.
Right.
So
Right. Is that
you
is that
could,
one of
right?
your projects, Cynthia?
No, I just made it up. I mean,
That's kind
that's
of
a
like
great
Remembrance
prompt.
of Things Past is sort of about a cookie
I
in a
mean, it
way.
could be anything. You baking a cookie, maybe that cookie, is a chance for $100,000 scholarship for
Right.
somebody's son who is dying from cancer.
Well, exactly right. Because and what you've done is taken that concept and added stakes. And I don't mean like the kind of stakes that I grill. I mean you added something that matters and you added people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's that kind of dramatization, that the understanding of how to dramatize a situation effectively, that's so important in a writer. I mean that's what you're giving your clients as a book coach, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. It's the why should I care? Like the why
Yeah.
should I care?
Right. Exactly. And it's not just why should I care, but it's like, why should I shell out money for this book?
Yes,
Because
that's true
ultimately
too.
you're
That's true
trying to
too.
support yourself with your writing.
Yes, exactly.
Um, well, we're coming to the end of our night, but we certainly have time for a few more questions. And while I'm waiting, I'm going to just ask, what project are you working on now that you're most excited about that you can talk to us about
Um,
anyway?
I'm so excited about this. I was just telling you about this, Fall. The airport book. so, so I have my
Right.
long-term client that I'm working for, well, for a long time. And he has been trying to do this book for years. And finally, we've arrived at a concept and we have a chapter sample and we have an outline. And so, which is what you would do for a proposal, right? You would have a sample chapter and then the whole outline for the book.
Yep. So
And
this is a nonfiction book.
this is for a nonfiction book, but there's a little bit of autobiographical stuff in it,
Okay.
just a little bit, a
Okay.
dash. Um, it's self-help, health and wellness. And when And in this project, like I said, I'm like a project manager. So we hired a really, really, just fantastic team. And it's come together and it's like, this is the airport book. And I call it the airport book because I see it in airports. So I'm really excited by that. It's really awesome when you um have just that great combination of content, structure, um, the dream team, like the client, the collaborators, the scientists, the people that are involved in making the book be authentic and just so usable by a lot of people to help them, and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to help so many people. It's so meaningful. So yeah, so that's the project I'm really excited by. I'm program managing that one. So I'm working with agents, the collaborators, the scientists, whatever, just to basically push the project through.
That is
So
awesome.
yeah, I'm really excited.
All
I hope
right.
it goes to auction.
Can you talk about, and if you can't, just say I can't talk about it. Can you talk about like what Marvel characters you've written? I have a
Oh
question about
yeah.
that.
Well, I can say Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten
Oh,
Rings.
yes.
Yeah,
Sweet.
because that's out. But I did for Marvel, mainly what I do is adaptations. Though there's some original stories, though I can't say which characters, but because they're not out yet. But the Shang-Chi one I can because that's out. So
Uh-huh.
that was really fun because
One of my
working.
favorite characters when I was young and really into comic books was Shang-Chi. So that's so
Really?
cool. Oh yeah, I love
Oh
him.
my God, it's
I
so
have
cool.
almost the whole run of that
Oh
comic.
my
I still have
gosh.
my comic collection. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I hope the students find this inspiring. So, what I mean by adaptations is, what happens is Disney or Marvel will say, "Hey, we have a new film coming out. We need you to look at the film and adapt it into a novel format for," because I write for children and teens, right? So they'll say what age group, and they'll tell me how many words to be able to do that in. So for Shang-Chi it was a junior novel. So it was so
And
cool because
what does a junior novel mean?
a junior novel is like it's like a novel, but it's for like younger kids, like 10 years old,
Okay.
11 years old. So it's not going to be as long as like, like a 250 page. It'll be like shorter, like 100,
Yep.
something like that.
So like a
So it'll be shorter.
40,000 word project or
Yeah,
something?
less, like
Yeah.
25,000, something like that.
Okay. Okay.
And so then what happens is they will, oh my gosh, I've been in so many crazy situations with Disney and Marvel where it's like, I might get the script, I might not get the script, I might like I
Yeah.
might get some half done movie to look at. I think in Shang-Chi, I got oh yeah, I got a production script, which was crazy. So it was like, I've never seen a production script before. And I was like, I don't even know how to, it was insane. And I only had like so many hours because they
Right.
locked down their scripts because you can't get out, right? Like this movie isn't out yet. So I only have so many hours and I'm like stressing out, like trying to like, again, like I'm outlining like crazy. And then I'm thinking, okay, and then so I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to architect this novel when I only have the script for like 48 hours. So I quickly outline it, and then as I'm like so then I'm developing the outline, sending it to the editor, getting them to thumbs up, yep, that's correct, that's the story structure, that's how you probably should interpret this. Then later I might see an early version of, well, parts of the film or whatever, just even scenes. And then I'm literally trying to grab lines of dialogue and stick it in the
Hmm.
novel so it's true to the film. They're very good
Wow.
about it needs to be true to the film. It cannot be, you can't just make stuff up.
Yeah.
The one thing you can do is you can make up thoughts, right? Because you don't
Okay.
necessarily see thoughts in film, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I can make up a thought here, like, for oh, Simi Lou, like Simi Lou's gonna think this. And I crack myself up with whatever
That's a
thought it is that
loophole.
wasn't in the movie.
That's great.
Anyways, it's cool. It's very fun.
Uh, all right. So, and that brings us to 9 o'clock, which is the end of our Wireside chat. So I want to thank uh, our audience. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. I especially want to thank Cynthia for joining us. Cynthia, I feel like I could have talked with you for another hour easily. So I
Oh,
hope you'll come
easily,
back for a
easily.
future event at some point.
We could do a part 2.
Yes, exactly. We'll come back and do part 2.
But for my
And
students in my
until
class,
then,
yeah, I was going to say for my students in my class, or if you ever have me, do not hesitate to talk to me. Like, send me an email and go, can we just chat for like 15 minutes, whatever. I'm so happy to do that. And I can help answer any questions that you have about anything, basically.
yeah, and I mean, you can tell just from, I hope, from listening to Cynthia tonight, that if you give her 15 minutes with your story, that she's going to improve it dramatically. So,
Anyway, all right. Thank you so much,
all right.
everybody.
Good
Bye.
night,
Thank you.
everybody.